Hey guys, this month I want to get a little bit away from talking more about preparing fibers for spinning and kind of jump over to dyeing. That's one of my favorite things to do, is to change the color of my yarn, and I just so happen to have some yarn that I need to dye here in the next few days, so I thought now would be a great time to bring that up. Back in the 18th century, there were no synthetic dyes. That was not created until the 19th century, so they had to rely on natural resources to change the color of their fabric or their yarn. They could have used things like mud or berries, bugs, tree bark, the tree itself, plants, flowers, you name it, even lichen. Somebody had to be very creative to try all of this stuff. So, you know, in 18th century Europe, the colors that were more prominent would have been the browns and yellows, because those were easily achieved. Most plants will achieve a yellow or a brown. Now the blues and pinks and reds and purples, those were a lot harder to achieve back in those days. The things that you can dye would be your cotton, your linen, wool, hemp, but you know, any of the fibers that they would have used back in the 18th century could have been dyed. Each fiber is going to require a different type of method. The art of dyeing is really a science, so it's part chemistry, part botany, a whole heck of a lot of creativity, and a good dose of luck thrown in, because if you just change, like if you use tap water versus filtered water, that right there can change the color of your finished product. So that's why people use books instead of winging it these days. That way they can rely on somebody who's gone before them and done the hard work of figuring out what is going to achieve the best results. The books that I like to use are Early American Weaving and Dyeing. This has got a whole lot of interesting receipts in it for different colors to achieve, and they use old-fashioned methods including mud and urine. I haven't done very much out of that one because I feel a little intimidated by it, I guess. I have Organic Fiber Dyeing, the Colonial Williamsburg method, and I have Harvesting Color, and that is the first book that I got and has really been very helpful. Has a lot of pretty pictures in it too. So I just kind of wanted to show you some of the yarns that I have dyed, just so you can kind of get an idea of the colors that you can achieve. But first I wanted to show you a couple of natural skeins. I have Natural Brown. This is from a merino sheep, and most of what I do actually is wool. Wool is the easiest fiber to dye, and it's just easier for me. That's what I like to spin, so that's what I'm going to dye. This is from a Corriedale sheep, so it's kind of an off-white. It's really hard to get an actual pure white from sheep unless you bleach their wool after you have processed it. So if I was to use one of these for dyeing, I would go for this, right? Because this is so dark that it's going to be pretty much impossible to see any sort of coloring on this. If you use like a dark purple, you might see a little bit on there, but it's not really going to be worth your time. So you're going to want to go for the whites, even gray, like a light gray or a light brown will achieve colors, achieve pretty colors, but it's not going to look the same as the white. So if you use like a gray, then it's going to change the shade of color. So the ones that I've dyed recently, the first one here is dyed with madder root, and it's kind of a light pink coral color. And then I have another, this is my embroidery thread that I've dyed, and dyed it with madder root, and it's more of a orangey red color. I used the dye on this first, and then I used the dye pot with this next. So whatever you put in first is going to achieve a darker color, but there's still going to be color in it, so you're going to want to throw more yarn in to soak up that color and not waste it, but it's going to be a lighter color, is what I'm trying to get at here. Next I have logwood, and it is a wood. It's like, wood shavings is what is used. And whenever you put the wood shavings into a pot, it's kind of an orangey, reddish color, but whenever you introduce heat, it turns it a purple color. So this one would have been put in the dye pot first, and after this was done, I would have removed it and I put this in to achieve a light purple. And then next we have cochineal. Cochineal is a type of bug. It's a little parasite that lives on cactuses in Mexico and South America. And a little bit of interesting history for you here. The British soldiers, their red coats would have been made with cochineal, which was reserved for the officers, and madder root, which would have been reserved for those who were lower down. And of course it would have been a darker color than this here, but I thought that was interesting. Next I have a yellow yarn that has been dyed with marigold, and like I said earlier, there are a lot of plants out there that can achieve yellows and browns. And yellows in particular have a tendency to kind of fade in the daylight. Next we have a light brown color that has been dyed with Kutch, that would have originated from India, and that is what they use to create the color khaki. Now I also introduced an iron powder to it, which gave it a darker color. And then last here I have a little bit of fiber that hasn't been turned into yarn yet that has been dyed with indigo. Indigo is a plant. So that's all I have for now. Thanks guys.